Okay. So communicative language teaching, it is an approach, and it origins of communicative language teaching uh, are to be found in the changes in the British language teaching tradition dated from the late 1960 decades. In the late 1960 decade, it is observed that uh, English language teaching scenario should be changed. Why? They want the communicative competency in case of English language teaching. And for this reason, they change. And this CLT provides the learners to experiment and try out what they know. Yeah? And these are the thing. Okay? And to prepare students to be confident communicators for different real life contexts through repetitive oral practices and student-to-student cooperation. In the last video that we have watched, that is the whenever students will involve in real life communication based on their necessities, okay? Then their confidence level will grow up and they can communicate confidently and correctly. That is the concept of communicative language teaching. Okay. And it has some advantages: enhancing students' competence in speaking English in various situations, encouraging students to practice their language in real communications, and also stimulating the students to speak communicatively, motivating students to be brave in interacting using English. These are the things, and that activities help the students to improve their fluency, pronunciation, performance when using the target language. And it has some disadvantages. This approach focuses on fluency, but not accuracy. And that is the result, okay? Naturally, you may hear, and we all may hear the concept in Bangladeshi English language teaching context that yes, you can talk. There is no problem that whatever may be the pronunciation and the others. Okay, but and this is the challenge or limitation of CLT. That means CLT focuses on fluency, not accuracy. Okay? And there may have some incoherent, grammatically incorrect sentences. So when a student will hunt fluency, they will rather lose the accuracy. And that is the limitation of CLT. Okay. And here,
Sir,
CLT,
can you repeat the previous sentence?
whenever you will be hunting, whenever you will be trying to catch your fluency, you will lose your accuracy. Okay? That is the concept in CLT, and that is the limitation of CLT as well. Why? Because it is also encouraged and said that is okay, speak, problem, mistake doesn't matter. Eh? And for this reason, we see that actually in case of Bangladeshi second language learner, they are quite fluent, but they are not quite okay in their grammatical knowledge. Okay, that I have said. That means if you go for CLT fluency, then you will lose your accuracy in the perspectives.
Yes, sir, I
But
understand. Thank you.
actually, some linguists say that CLT is easy, and some academicians they also say that CLT is easy, but CLT is more challenging because CLT will be working on these functions, actually notions, functions, meaning, and context. Okay. What it be your motive? If you are sad, if you are in a position to regret someone's invitation, if you are in a position to invite others, what it would be your expression? Okay. In which context? you will be using your sentence, and in which context you will be using which sentence. That is the thing involved in CLT. And for this reason, it is more challenging. Okay. So this, in case of sequencing the task in case of CLT, what I did in my holidays, what range of activities, communicative competence, communication principles, task principles, meaningfulness principles, learning activities, interactive language games. Okay, everything will be involved to make these things okay in case of, that means notion, functions, meaning, and context to okay in this CLT. So if you go back to the background, the origin of communicative language teaching are to be found in the changes in the British language teaching tradition dated from the 1960 decades. And before that, this situation and other approach was involved in case of second language teaching. British applied linguists began to call into question the theoretical assumption underlying situational language teaching. By the end of the 60s, it was clear that situational approach had run its course. There is no future in continuing it to pursue the chimera of predicting language of the basis of the situational events. Okay. So before 1960, the British linguist and the British second language teaching was not involved in CLT. They were using situational approach. What is the situational approach? Not, that means they were trying to impose the teaching and learning scenario for some specific occasions or a specific situation. That can be called situational approach. That was it first. But the British linguists, they thought that we should change this scenario. Okay. And here, Noam Chomsky has leveled the structural linguistics theory, and he in his new classic book Syntactic Structure in 1950. So he has written this book that is syntactic structure. Okay, we know structure. What is the syntactic structure? That means a structure based on the elaborate description of a sentence pattern, especially based on context. And after that, British applied linguists emphasized another fundamental dimension of language that was inadequately addressed in the approach to language teaching at the time: the functional and communicative potential of language. So, functional and communicative potential, we can communicate with others with some with our body gestures. Okay, but the British linguist said that the communicative potential of language should be encouraged. Okay. And with their appeal, these three men, Widdowson, Henry Widdowson, Christopher Candlin, John Fart, M.K. Halliday, especially M.K. Halliday is famous. American work in sociolinguistics, Dale Himes, or Himes, you can say, John Gumperz, William Lubbock, as well as work in the philosophy, and John Austin and John Scott. Okay, so they also started talking this approach. That means we should need and we should reform our educational second language teaching and learning scenario. And the Council of Europe, a regional organization for cultural and educational cooperation, examined the problem. And education was one of the councils of Europe's major area of activity. Okay. They also need the International Association of Applied Linguistics. They initiated, and they need to develop alternative methods of English language teaching that got priority in case of second language teaching. Okay. And in 1971, a group of experts began investigating the philosophy of developing language, and they Wilkins in 1972, which proposed a functional and communicative definition of language. So gradually, they have discussed the communicative perspectives of language or communicative potential language. Chomsky wrote a book. Next time, Wilkins developed the theory. And next time, here we see that Wilkins later revised and expanded in 1970 documents into a book titled Notional Syllabuses. Previously, many of you may remember that there was a kind of syllabus, that is the notional functional syllabus. Okay, so that was involved in English language teaching scenario in Europe. The Council of Europe incorporated his semantic or communicative analysis into a set of a specific level of first. So in such a way, the language learning, teaching learning initiated. Okay, and with their proposal, with the proposal of Wilkins, M.K. Holliday, F.K. Ford, and other European linguists, they initiated that. The work of the Council of Europe and the writings of Wilkins, Widdowson, Cadden, Christopher Bumford, A. Johnson, and other British applied linguists on the theoretical basis of communicative or the functional approach of language teaching. And the rapid application of these ideas of the textbook writers equally accepted, and the specialist curriculum development and even the government gave prominence nationally and internationally to what came to be referred as the communicative approach or simply communicative language teaching. So we can get the brief idea of origin of communicative language teaching. That means in 1960 decades, British linguists thought a change in linguistic teaching, and then Noam Chomsky published a book that is syntactic structure, and next time Wilkins published a book, a notional syllabus. That means this Wilkins, Widdowson, and Cadden, they also tried to have a change in English language teaching, focusing on the communicative aspects of language. And with their proposals, we got an approach in second language teaching, that is communicative language teaching. Okay, this is the background of communicative language teaching. And this term, notional functional approach, okay, notional functional approach are also sometimes used. Although the movement began as a largely British innovation, focusing on the alternative concept of that, okay, both American and the British proponent now see it as an approach, not a method, okay, that aims to make communicative. So what would be the principles or objectives of communicative language teaching? Number A, make communicative competence the goal of language teaching. Okay, that means, what did I say? That means after 1960 decades, people, especially the European people, they thought that communicative competence should be encouraged. And in this regard, CLT came up. And CLT's first goal is to make communicative competence of the learners. Develop procedures for the teaching for the 4 language skills. Okay, so it will not be focusing on reading, writing, or write that. You will be focusing on all language skills. Okay, and there is no single text or authority on it for any single model, and the universally accepted as authoritative. For example, communicative language teaching means little more than an integration of grammatical and the functional teachings. Okay, so little you said. One of the most characteristic features of the communicative language teaching is that it pays systematic attention to functional as well as structural aspects of the language. Okay. So that is the aspect. So the first thing, that means make communicative competence the goal of language teaching, and develop the procedures of the teaching for the 4 skills. So two aspects that was elaborated in case of CLT that was initiated. And Howard distinguishes between weak version and the strong version of communicative language teaching. There is in a sense, the strong version communicative approach and a weak version. The weak version, which has become more or less a standard practice in the last 10 years, it stresses the importance of providing learners with opportunities to use their English for the communication purposes and characteristically attempts to integrate such activities into the wider program of the language. The strong version, that means in weak version, they will be practicing communication in the target language and they will try to provide it in other contexts. Strong version, communicative language teaching, on the other hand, advances the claim that language is acquired through communication, so that it is not merely a question of activating or existing or inert knowledge of the language, but of stimulating developing of the language system itself. Okay, so there are two versions of this communicative: strong version and weak version. More or less, both are same, but second one, that is a strong version, the communicative teaching will give prominence. Okay, and that is in case of this version. We see that direct method, audiolingual method, and CLT, all are quite similar. They will be focusing on communication or communicative competence. Okay, rather CLT gave emphasis on developing all skills. That is the difference. So here we see the difference between audiolingual and communicative language teaching, audiolingual method and communicative language teaching. That will make our idea a bit clear. Okay, audiolingualism attempts to structure and form more than meaning. In CLT, that is, meaning is paramount. Most probably you haven't forgotten that is notion, function, and context is very necessary. Audiolingualism, the limitation of audiolingualism is that they will form their habit, but they can't contextualize their language learning. But in case of CLT, that means CLT students will make their knowledge applicable in all contexts. That is CLT. Demands memorization of the structure based. Okay, but in case of communication dialogue, if used, centered around communicative functions, not normally memorized. Okay, contextualization is the basic pattern. Okay, in CLT, language learning is learning to communicate. Effective communication is taught. Drilling may occur, but peripherally. Okay, so drilling is the central of audiolingualism, but in case of communication, if it is necessary, drilling will be applied. Comprehensible pronunciation is sought. Okay, native speakers like pronunciation is sought. In case of audiolingualism, your pronunciation should be like standard British English or American English. But in case of communication, the pronunciation that you will be using, that your pronunciation can be understood by others. That is for CLT. Okay. Grammatical explanation is avoided. Any device that helps the learner is accepted, varying according to the age and interest and others. Okay. So these are the differences. Some other differences will be there in case of attempt to communicate may be encouraged from the very beginning. Judicious use of native language. In audiolingualism and the direct method, first language will not be used. But in case of CLT, judicious use of native language is accepted or where feasible. Okay. Reading, writing can start from the very first day. Okay. So CLT can be synthesis of all previous methods and approaches. Okay. In this regard, CLT is more challenging. That means a student will learn the contextual uses of the target language, and they will be able to use the notional and the functional application and the contextual applications of the language. And so CLT teaching and learning in CLT is more challenging. If we can apply CLT in its fullest sense, it can be more and the most beneficial English language or the target language teaching approach of this world. Okay, so most probably you have understood that observing the difference between audiolingualism and CLT. Okay, so these are the difference. Some other differences are there. Okay, now you will read it. Okay, linguistic variation, fluency and acceptable language is the primary goal. Accuracy is just not in the abstract but in context. Students are accepted to interact with other people either in the fresh two-peer and group work or in other writings. Okay, so communication will be there in case of CLT. Okay, so theory will be there. So CLT is an approach. Why? Because communicative approach is a language teaching, starts from the theory of the language as communication. Okay, and we know that approach is the theoretical underpinning. So CLT is the combination of several assume or several hypotheses, that is communication, contextualization. If we can contextualize the language learning, that will develop our listening, speaking. That means our communication. That is the assumption, and that is the hypothesis. And with this assumption and the hypothesis, CLT is established. And for this reason, CLT is called an approach. It is not a method. Okay. So for Chomsky, it focuses on linguistic theory. Okay, and the others. Okay, and Haim also put some things regarding the CLT. Okay, so the 7 basic functions of the language performs for the children learning and their first language. The instrumental function, using language to get things. The regulatory function, so these are the functions of the language. The notional function and approach, that is CLT. So the functional of language will also be implemented with this approach CLT. Okay, and teaching language through communication. So some other proponent, they also wrote this book. Okay, so these are the CLT's theory. Okay, there will have some design of or objectives of this CLT. Objectives that an integrative and content level, okay, a linguistics and instrumental level, okay, an effective level of interpersonal relationship and conduct. Okay, so these will be the design, a general educational level of extra linguistic goals, language learning within the school curriculum. Okay, so these will be the goal. Syllabus will be, what would be the syllabus of CLT? That would be depending on the students where you are teaching or in which level you are applying CLT. Okay, according to the level you are teaching, that means you have to apply the syllabus, and keeping the notional and the functional view of the language, you have to design the syllabus, learners. And especially as well as the vocabulary and the grammar is needed. The result was published as a threshold level English. Okay, so and was the attempt to specify and what was needed in order to. So these are the syllabus of CLT. That means syllabus of CLT will be applied based on the necessity. If anybody wants to develop the syllabus of intermediate level, he will be doing so according to the requirements of the students. And if the secondary level, so he or she will be develop the syllabus according to the necessity of the requirement, keeping it in mind that the notional and the functional view of the language will be applied. Okay. So here you see communicative syllabus types and with their sources. Structure plus function, Wilkins. So here's the written function. Okay, structural, function, and instrumental, functional, notional, Wilkins, interactional. Okay, so the Widdowson has written a book. Okay, so if you want to improve the interactional view of the language in your syllabus, you can include the book written by Widdowson. Okay, so in such and vice versa. If you want to improve the task base, then you have to improve the syllabus of Prabhu. Okay, so these are the things that would be included in CLT. That means keeping these structural, functional, and notional views of the language will be applied. So if you design and if you develop the specific view of the learner, then you have to apply this book according to the requirement or the necessity of you are teaching following the CLT, communicative language teaching. Okay. So there are types of learning and teaching activities will be there. Okay. So we have said that means judicial drill will be there, but you can make it when it would be applicable. So drill will be there, discussion will be there, involvement will be there, and also other thing the teacher can apply, keeping in mind that you have to have, that means the learner have to have the knowledge so that they can apply their knowledge in the context they will be using. Okay. So learner's role will be there. Learners will be the role of learner as negotiator between the self, the learning processes, and the object of learning. Emergence from and interact with the role of the joint negotiator within the group. Okay, so the negotiator. So student will be communicating with all the class, student to student, in a group, in a peer, or so. In that case, student will be the negotiator in CLT. If student remains inactive, so CLT will not be successful. So in every way, in every possible way, learner should be activated. Activated in which sense? Activated in participation of group work, peer work, and other aspects that will increase the participation or increase the participation of the class. So that is the learner's role. So in CLT, learners will have the prime role. So the way the teacher will try to involve the learners in every possible way within the classroom. And the classroom should be small in size. And teacher's role, teacher has two main roles. The first role is to facilitate the communication process between all participants in the classroom. Naturally, for the culture, and in some culture, you will see that if we talk to Chinese, they are very shy and they will not be interacting with each other. But if you talk to an Italian, they will be asking you so many questions. They are very much interactive. So in Italian culture, they are very much eager to involve in communication. But in Chinese and Japanese culture, they are not involved. And even in the overall Asian culture, the students and every people feel shy for the interpersonal communications. And for this reason, the teacher's role in case of CLT to involve all kinds of learners in the active participation. And that is, what the teacher will do. So the teacher will try to negotiate or try to give the facility so that every student can involve in the participations, okay, to facilitate the communication process between all participants in the classroom. And between this participation, the various activities and the text, the second role is to act as an independent participation within the learning teaching groups. So teacher will be there, the second role. And the third role of the teacher is that of the researcher and the learner within with must to contribute in terms of appropriate knowledge and bilingual or actual or other observations. Okay, so that would be the teacher's role. Okay, and also needs analyst. Okay, so I have said that CLT is the synthesis of all previous methods and approach in second language teaching. Okay, so what is not told or which is not told up to this in this theoretical class, if teacher think that he will be applying some other method or some other things, keeping it mind that he or she should involve all the learners, okay, then he will try to apply any technique or method. What is that? Okay, if a teacher is supposed to teach in Asian context, the teacher will try to eradicate the cultural gap or the cultural things involved in second language teaching and learning. Okay, so the needs analysis, that means teacher will analyze the needs of the learner, and he will try to apply the syllabus or methods in the different way. Okay, so that is a teacher will be the group manager as well. Okay, so other things will be there, the role of instruction materials. Okay, also in case of CLT, that means which method or which materials you are applying in the class, that will carry weight. So in case of in case of the context, the teacher will try to apply the materials in the CLT classrooms. Okay, so these are all about CLT. Okay, so we can conclude in such a way that is CLT came in existence with the British or the European idea of reformation in second language teaching and learning scenario. And at that time, with the idea of M.K. Halliday, with the idea of John Fart, with the idea of Wilson, okay, they applied the notional functional syllabus, the structural syllabus, the structural syntactic structural syllabus, okay, the task-based syllabus. So keeping all this together, CLT flourished. And for this reason, CLT can be called the synthesis of all previous methods and approaches. And CLT, if CLT is applied in its truest sense and application, CLT can be successful and can be the best way of teaching the second language or the target language. Okay, and here you see some things will be there, appropriation will be there. So this appropriateness, okay, message focus, psycholinguistic processing, risk taking, okay, pre-practicing, that will also be involved in case of second language learning with the help of CLT. Okay.